In the next scene, we see that the DNA test result for Madamoon, combined with Junha's, has arrived. However, the man was shocked when he read that it was not compatible with his grandmother, and now, more secrets will come to light in this final stretch of the season. Meanwhile, Dongwook was ending his relationship with Yu Myung, stating that this moment is very important for him to dedicate himself entirely to his daughter, as the little girl must be confused with having her mother back in her life. Although both like each other, Yu Myung doesn't have much choice in this matter. At the Gong family home, In-ok feels distressed when she thinks about her son. She knows that for Taekyung to have decided to leave the family, even after receiving an apology from Madamoon for all the suffering she caused over the years, wasn't easy. So, in agreement with Chon-sik, the couple concluded that the best thing would be to honor Taekyung's choice. The next day, we continue at the Gong family home, but now we see EKA talking with Madamoon, and finally, the nun learned a little about her brother's confusion involving Hanol. Thus, to avoid being misled again by Junha, EKA went to the protagonist, and already at the apartment, Yeondu shared the story of her daughter and the battle she is fighting against the child's father. This conversation was quite important because later, when she was back at her church, EKA received a visit from her brother, and since the woman also learned about Taekyung's desire, she decided to give Junha some advice. EKA is someone who lost her mother young, just like Junha, so along with the truth about him being adopted by his parents when he was a baby, she asks him to leave the Gong family in peace regarding the custody issue of Hanol. The man has already brought a lot of suffering to them, and EKA believes that his mother wouldn't want this for Madamoon. Obviously, Junha felt offended by Aka's request. He just asks her to keep the secret of them not being biological siblings a bit longer because before the family learns the truth, Junha wants to secure custody of his daughter. And thinking he has little time before everyone knows, Junha wastes no more time and doesn't let his trust in EKA be the only thing he has left. The man goes straight to Chon-sik to make an offer to the family head. Junha says that if Chon-sik gives him custody of Hanol, he won't join the family and will leave them in peace, but we know this choice doesn't belong to the gentleman, and even if it did, Chon-sik would refuse 1,000 times. Junha's ideas are exhausted, and he no longer knows what to do, so he goes to Sejin to see if he can get some help. However, he is surprised when she tells him that she is tired of the Gong family and has decided to study abroad. Meanwhile, Sujong continued her volunteer work at the hospital and, having taken an interest in Woo-hee's son, even without knowing who the boy's mother was, she just wants to help him. To ease the financial burden on the family, Sujong anonymously paid all the hospital bills. However, that same afternoon, she bumped into the boy and was surprised to discover that Woo-hee is his mother. Later, the two sit down to talk, and once Sujong starts venting, she doesn't stop. She makes it clear to Woo-hee that if she had a son like Hong-jun, she would never have made him cry as Woo-hee has over the years, and warns her that the boy himself has said he would like to be adopted. In the next scene, we transition to Taekyung informing his mother-in-law and her brother about leaving the Gong family's registry. Since Bong-nim is very fond of the doctor and knows he wouldn't harm her daughter, learning that both are once again going through a difficult situation, she becomes extremely stressed and starts pondering a way to help them. Taekyung was drinking at the family restaurant with Dae-sang and later went to Madamoon's house, where, inebriated, he told everyone he loved them and that he wanted to sleep next to his grandma that night. Seeing the doctor in such a state for the first time affected Madamoon deeply. The next day, we start by seeing Sejin quickly visiting her mother's apartment to pick up her passport and begin a new phase of her life. However, Sejin and Jang Ho end up arguing, as he wants to know where his only daughter is moving to, and due to her bluntness, Jang Ho, who is having heart issues, starts having an attack, leading to him being rushed to the hospital. Although Sejin is a very strong woman, seeing her father in a life-threatening situation shook her. Meanwhile, Madamoon was at Junha's apartment, where she asked him to give up on Hanol. The lady explains that she can't and doesn't want to have to choose between him and Taekyung. However, at the same time, Eka was at the Gong family's house talking about her brother having been adopted and fears that the man, blinded by revenge, may do further harm to the family, so she hopes that with the truth, everything will be resolved. Eka made it clear that Junha discovered the adoption recently, but soon after, Chansik called his mother and revealed it to her, which caused her to feel unwell at Junha's house. Thus, Chansik went with his 2 sons to the man's apartment and brought his mother home. As soon as she arrived, she cleared things up with Eka, and although it seemed that Junha had plotted another scheme, this time he truly didn't know. In the next scene, we see Woo Hee with her son, and at that moment, my dislike for this woman grew even more. Instead of talking to the child and trying to understand why he prefers someone else as his mother, she simply told Hung Jun to go after Sujong since he prefers her. Since Daesang was nearby and knows the whole situation, as his beloved told him, as soon as Woo Hee leaves the room, he decides to talk to the boy to help the family, and it's at this moment that the two start to get closer. Then Daesang also tells Woo Hee some truths, and I loved it. He told her to be strong and stop crying because, after all, Woo Hee is the adult in the situation and should act accordingly. The next day, even though she is still shaken by the situation, Madamoon arranged a meeting with Junha, Taekyung, and Yeondu. She wants to resolve the conflict once and for all. Thus, Madamoon asked Junha to let Taekyung adopt the baby, as he wanted her only out of pride, and today, the lady understands this. Since Junha is still her grandson, Madamoon wants to teach him to be a good person and also makes it clear that, like him, Taekyung is also her grandson, so if Junha continues with this fight, Madamoon will no longer see him. Returning to Jangho, fortunately everything went well in the procedure he had to undergo, and despite being a big scare, perhaps this situation will be good for Se-jin to make peace with her father, as she was quite worried. The next day, now that everything is better in the Gong family, Taekyung and the protagonist decided to prepare a lunch for everyone in their apartment. However, Yumayong and Dongwook have not seen each other since the day they broke up. And since the two were the first to arrive, it was awkward when they were introduced to each other. Yumayong was ready to talk about their relationship, but as Dongwook pretended not to know her, she just went along with the act and became annoyed. During the party, Junha appeared, bringing good news with him. After drinking a lot the previous night, Junha decided to give up custody of Hanul and plans to leave Korea. But first, he only wants to spend a few hours with his daughter, and now it's up to the main couple whether or not to allow it. Meanwhile, Sujayam was spending time with her mother, having decided to give her a chance, and the girls' day was very nice. Sujayam had fun and realized they are very similar. However, when she was returning to her father, Sujayam ended up seeing him and Yumayong arguing. Dongwook said he didn't like Yumayong, and now that he was honest, the two could finally move on with their lives in peace, without excuses as he had been making before. In the next scene, we see Se-jin and Junha talking about their new plans, and since they are going to the same country, they decide to go together. Despite Jangho being quite ill, Se-jin comments that it would be insincere to make peace with him now since they don't have a typical father-daughter relationship. The next day, we see that the main couple agreed to Junha's request to spend the day with Hanul, and the man really made an effort to take care of her. However, chaos ensued when Junha was supposed to return the baby to the parents, and he didn't show up, leaving the whole family worried about what he might have done this time. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and share it to help me out. Until next time.